Oi, fala aí pessoal, bom dia. Você está escutando
O inglês do rádio.
I am your host, Foster Hodge. This is your daily dose of English. Hey, what's up, guys? Foster from Inglês no Cru. Today we have a special guest, João Marcos. João Marcos is a friend of ours, a friend of Alexia. What's up, João? How are you?
Hi guys, how are you doing? Hope you enjoy our show.
I'm sure they will. So, João, are you born in Rio?
I was born and raised in Rio. I still live here. Yeah, pretty much Carioca by birth and by right.
Yeah, da Gema.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So, João, I wanted to have you on the show for a couple of reasons. First of all, your English is excellent. So most people listening know that I teach English every day to Brazilians, and you're in like the top 1%. And I'm being serious. I don't know if that's a compliment to you or
No, it's a compliment to me, man. I feel honored, like honestly.
Or maybe it's more of a criticism of the Brazilian educational system. I don't know.
Which is good also.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good critique of yours.
Yeah. So, João, could you just tell me a little bit about your experience with English, like your background, how'd you get started, how'd you learn, etc.?
Sure. Start by saying that my background in English is not the typical one you'd find, because I come from like pretty comfortable family background and setting. So I studied in private schools here in Rio, private school. I only went to one school my whole life, and it was the British school in Rio de Janeiro. So it's one of like the top most schools here.
Yeah.
And the whole syllabus is taught in English. Like I was taught English since an early age, since I was 4 years old. All of my lessons were in English, except for Portuguese. But I pretty much learned all the subjects I learned in my whole life, which I use even in for the vestibular. I don't think there's like a word like that in English, right?
I say entrance exam, but that's a shitty translation.
A college SAT, right? You could say, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Brazilian SAT. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Brazilian SAT, which you take. Each university has one, so you can go and study into them. But that's not what we're talking about. But I learned all my subjects in English, like math, geography, history, sciences. So English has been pretty much ingrained in me since I was a child. Because that's the thing usually when people learn English later in life, right? They talk about having this switch, right? They have to turn a switch on or off. And actually, I think as much in English as I think in Portuguese. My thoughts are in Portuguese. Like if I stub my toe, I'd probably scream out and curse in Portuguese.
Yeah, you're gonna hear "caralho," not "fuck."
Yeah, exactly. But the act of thinking in English is as natural to me as it is in Portuguese. Like I don't have this. If I'm talking Portuguese with someone, and someone starts talking to me in English, I don't have to. There's no delay. There's no lagging. You know, like I can automatically turn up to the person and start speaking in English, and it just flows.
Right. It's not a conscious switch. It just happens automatically.
No, for example, Spanish, I still have to think about it in Portuguese, translate it in my mind, see if it's correct and say it. It's like it sounds like I take ages talking in Spanish. But it's kind of a quick calculation, but I still do it. In English, I don't do it. It just flows through me.
Yeah,
like,
it's automatic. Yeah, that's really cool. So,
and important.
Sorry.
No, it's just something important that I think like everyone should do it. You should keep practicing it, right? I mean, sometimes I won't speak it as much as I would like, but I'm always consuming all kind of media I can in English. So I'll listen to podcasts, I'll watch movies with English subtitles because I think it's important. Because you'll pick up some words which you don't know, and you see them using the context, and it's clearer to you. And I read a lot in English. For example, if I'm reading a book that's not only American and British authors, but I have this kind of rule, like whenever I'm reading a language, I don't know. So, for example, German has roots with English, right? So I'll read an English translation of German authors, like
Yeah.
this kind of thing. So I'm always keeping up with my vocabulary in that sense.
Yeah.
Important, I think. Otherwise, you'll lose your vocabulary and you'll be stuck to kind of like simple words, which makes it like clear to someone like a native speaker like yourself. You can tell
Mhm.
when someone's like speaking that English course kind of like vocabulary, right?
Oh,
Which is
for
like
sure.
some
100%. Yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you is obviously you had English training that most people don't get in Brazil, a very formal training at a private school, but you've maintained your English to an excellent level, even like improved it with pretty much any slang I could say you already know. So, I mean, apart from just like podcast and things like that, how are you always consistently using your English or not necessarily using, but you're never losing, you know? Like all my students say like, "Oh, it's easy for him. He studied at a British school." Yeah, that part was easy, but not the part of you still speaking perfect English today, you know?
I mean, I have friends who studied with me. Like, I still keep in touch with most of my school friends. They're pretty much my adult friends nowadays.
Adult friends. That's funny.
But I mean, that's something very particular. I think it's kind of like a self-discipline you have to have and keep learning the language. Because I have friends, I have a really good friend of mine, which we joke with him. Like, he didn't learn English when he was in school, and he can't speak it today. When you like, he studied his whole life in the British school, just like I did. When he speaks, you'll turn to him and look at him like, wow, like when did this guy start learning English? I have other friends which were pretty good speakers, but they lost it. They didn't practice it. They didn't maintain it. They just kind of lost it.
Yeah.
I've always had an interest in languages, and I knew I come from like, I hate this word, but I'll use it, like a privileged background, right?
Yeah.
Like if I lost this English, like this whole education I had, it would be such a waste, like kind of
Yeah.
just being an asshole. Sorry for using that word. Like,
No, you're welcome to curse as much as you want. Yeah.
no, man, I learned like proper Shakespeare, like read plays Shakespeare. And I had to analyze like one of my exams in school. I did like the GCSEs and the IBs, right, for England.
Yeah. Yeah.
UK speakers, maybe like people who live in the UK might be aware of those exams. And there was like an English, I actually did English A1, which they call English literature.
Mm-hmm.
I had actually to record like this analysis of like, I never forgot it, about like Hamlet. It was like the part in the play where Polonius hides behind the curtain while Hamlet confronts Gertrude, his mother, and stuff. And so, I mean, it was a rich experience. And to lose it just because I'm lazy or I can bother to practice it, it's just, it seems a waste.
Yeah. It's like a lazy piece of shit. It's like, come on, dude. Yeah. There's so much money and time spent towards your English. You should maintain it.
And it is a universal language in the world. Like, whatever qualms you may have about it, like, I don't know, American cultural dominance or whatever, like, tough luck, bitch.
Yeah, it's the lingua franca.
That's the world we live in. Like, the internet is in English, and it's pretty much like the mainstream communication media we use. I mean, so
Yeah.
I have this amazing advantage. I was talking to you, right, just before we recorded, how I actually wrote a skit in English for this Portuguese TV show here in Brazil. So I mean, you use it somehow. Some people think, I'll never use it. Why should I keep it up? I mean, it will never turn up again. It will. Like, you never know. Like, it's an advantage for you to learn another language and actually like masterfully use it. So
yeah, I mean, it's going to turn up, and it's not going to close any doors. It's only going to open a lot of doors. Yeah.
No, I agree with you 100%. I concur. I always love to use this term. I concur.
I concur. That is slightly British to me. I concur.
Yeah, I tend to use some British, like aluminium, right? You guys say aluminum, right? In the US.
Aluminum.
The other way around. Yeah, I learned it as aluminium.
Really? That's crazy.
The last letter in the alphabet is a Z.
Z.
It's a zebra.
That's funny. So how did you work on changing your accent from nowadays? I would say you have pretty much an American accent, or at least a generalized North American accent. definitely not a British accent. Did you have to
No,
actively
no, I
make a
don't.
transition?
No, that's funny because like my brother, he's like just a year removed. That's the right expression, right? Just a year removed from my age, or
You can
he's
say
just
that.
like
That's super formal. I would just say he's a year younger than me.
a year younger. I don't get to use it like formal terms, so when I get the chance, I'm just like pouncing at the opportunity.
I concur. He's a year removed from me.
But he, my younger brother, my younger no, he's our middle brother, but he's a year younger than I am.
Mhm.
He has like a pretty formal, like kind of British accent, which he worked on it. I always focused when I was younger in school. I remember like this conscious effort of mine to learn the language, like to learn how to use it. Because I mean, I didn't have no illusions of getting like a proper like British accent. Because first of all, I thought it was ridiculous. I mean, if I look like a Brazilian, I'm speaking with just like this formal like Cockney accent or whatever. Like, it just sounds terrible.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like I didn't pay attention to my accent, to tell you the truth. Like, I always thought I had like this strong Latin American accent, but I actually lived it for a year in England, in Norwich.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to uni there for a year. Uni, another British term, right?
I
College.
went to college. I went to uni.
I went to college there for a year. So my friends there, my British friends, they like when we were talking amongst ourselves and like commenting like cultural differences and those kind of things you talk about in college when you're pre-drunk.
Yeah.
And they would comment like that they'd say like my vocabulary was really good, but I had this like Latin American, like typical Latin American accent, which flows like up and down, like the
Very musical.
melody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the melody of it. I remember once we had like this whole chat about like the melodies of languages,
Yeah.
because the American something like kind of your emphasis is kind of like towards the end of the sentence, right? You finish up strong. Like the British English, kind of a twang in the middle of it. It's kind of like a curve.
Exactly.
And the Brazilian speak English like it kind of sounds like kind of wavy, like kind of
It's
like
just up and down, up and down. Yeah.
yeah, very melodic kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't focus, man. I actually didn't bother about my accent whatsoever. But I think I'm influenced a lot by the media, by movies, by TV shows, by when I was younger, cartoons, right?
Yeah. I imagine nowadays you're not consuming too much British media, at least compared to
No,
American media.
you watch some TV shows, but they usually, for some reason, I think because American audiences prefer to consume them, they're usually like back in the day, right? They're like not contemporary.
Yeah.
So they will speak in like this outdated manner, and
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. Yeah.
yeah, like there's no sense. That's actually one thing I'll comment about. I actually don't understand. You as an American, I don't think you'll laugh. What you'll say about it?
I'll probably laugh.
Like, why? I think it's something to give it some kind of gravitas or something. But like, for example, Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
It's a fantasy world. It's a fantasy continent. Like, there's no parallel with Earth with this reality whatsoever.
Yeah.
Why the fuck do all the actors sound British, man? What's the difference if they sounded American? I think it's cheaper to hire British actors. Like, what's the deal with it? Like, does a British-speaking person make it look like something like traditional and ancient? Like, oh yeah, it's set in ancient times because he has a British accent.
Honestly, I think that's a great point about how media can kind of make us a little bit dumber sometimes. Obviously, Game of Thrones is, internationally targeted, but the US is his biggest market. Yeah, I think Americans are just like, oh, yeah.
Honestly, there isn't like a single American accent in Game of Thrones, I'd say. You have like the Northern Irish, you have the Irish accents, you have like all the different regions of England. Like, you probably have a New Zealander accent in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But you don't have an American accent. That's I don't you don't need like a Woody Allen New Yorker accent in there. Like, there's none whatsoever. Like none.
Yeah, we definitely don't need Woody Allen in here. Yeah.
There's even guys that sound like Spanish people speaking English, but you don't like the Dorn folk, but you don't have like an American accent in it.
I think that's just a general rule with media. Like, if something is historical, they automatically are like, shit, guys, no American actors. Let's just put a lot of British people, and American people will think automatically like, oh yeah, that's how they spoke back then. you know?
I think there's something to it. Like it's something that always fascinated me. Like why do like old shows have like British accent, even though there's nothing related to England sometimes, like nothing.
Yeah.
But I think
Maybe there is a more complicated answer, but honestly, I think it's just like Americans are like, oh yeah. Until America started, everyone just talked like a British
just
person.
just spoke like Shakespeare all around. Like,
exactly. It's kind of dumb, but yeah, that's what we do.
yeah, sorry, deep from the subjects, just like something I had to take off my chest. Sorry.
No, that's it. I'm sure that's been weighing on you for a long time. So, well, do you have any recommendations for people that would, like, for example, we have a lot of pretty advanced speakers. Just the idea of like really talking and being confident. Like, I have a lot of students that know English in
Mhm.
quotations extremely well, but they still have trouble just like getting to that next level of where you are, of, more or less a fluent English speaker completely. Do you have any ideas of like how people get over that last little hump?
I don't know, man. I was thinking about that before because it sounds so like silly, and I think people will probably roll their eyes when I say that, but I think it's just it's something my father taught me. Like my father, he speaks English and Spanish, but like very like basic. Like he can figure himself around in any Spanish speaking country or English speaking country.
Yeah, yeah.
He can understand like media in its original languages, but he was kind of like self-taught in a ways, and he always taught me that like you just have to you just got to keep a straight face and say it, and just like you have the courage to just, I don't know if courage is the right word, but I mean,
I think it is a courageous act. Yeah.
yeah, just speak it. Because I mean, when I hear someone like, for example, a non-Portuguese native speaker come try to speak Portuguese, I'll try to correct him, not as a condescending, like patronizing thing, like, oh, your verb times are not right or whatever, not conjugating. It's because I know that person is making conscientious effort, right, to learn the language and speak it, and I'm trying to help him on the way. So don't be afraid to make small mistakes and be corrected, because it's just working. It's just something that will work out in your favor.
Yeah.
So like, be bold, like open up your chat and speak it. Like if you speak it like really fast and just keep going at it, they won't even have time to correct you, and they'll actually question if they heard it wrong or you said it wrong.
I imagine that's your
But
technique. Yeah.
yeah, but honestly, like I haven't been speaking English like we're doing right now for a while. I
yeah.
was actually, as we were talking, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I felt like 5 minutes ago in the conversation, I was worse than I am right now. Just from speaking it and like kind of like revving up the engines, and like,
yeah, warming up again.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just kicks in, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. I mean, you just have to. It sounds silly, I know. It's like very commonplace to say it, but I think there's no magical, no like a key or ingredient, right? You just have to speak it. That's the thing. You have to speak it. Like if you're a track runner, how do you beat the 100-meter like time? By running. You have to run. You have to keep running until you're fast enough to do it.
Yeah. You keep running. Normally you have someone that helps you and it's like, hey, you got to do this to run faster. And then you work on what they say. You're not like, oh, I don't want to take your advice and then stop,
I mean, unless you're like a polymath genius or something, like it's work. I mean, right?
Yeah.
There's no, it's that famous Thomas Edison quote, right? 99% transpiration and 1% inspiration, right? It's just, yeah, you got to work on it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I do. I keep working on it up until today. The only thing I regret is that I don't have another person sometimes to speak with. So it's much more of an intake kind of thing there than an output.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Exactly. Well, we can speak whenever you want.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to be invited for more podcasts. I'm liking the experience. So
oh, it's awesome. We need more content. Yeah.
you want to call me again.
Yeah. Cool. So thanks a lot, João. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, man.